大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. When I was young, I was right there, fighting the man. Police were my enemy. All authority, in fact. I was a rebel through and through. I don't know what I was rebelling against exactly, but I was right. As I slowly grew up one painful year at a time, that negative energy faded. And without warning, one day I realized something about myself. I don't hate the police. I don't hate authority. In fact, I don't hate anyone at all anymore. Maybe it was that my priorities had changed. I no longer wanted to be left alone to drink myself to death or worse, on the streets homeless. Or maybe it was that I stopped looking for others to blame for my problems. Years of my mind caving in on itself achieved nothing but a distraction while I grieved for my childhood experience. But by the time my career was mid-swing, I already wasn't looking for people to blame. I didn't try to stop. It was more like the urge to blame others slipped away from me. So maybe that was it. Maybe somehow I realized that, I'm not here to change laws. So am I here to complain about them? What am I actually interested in doing? Endlessly whining about the people who enforce laws? No, I'm here to achieve something. And I'm going to have to do it completely alone. I'm going to build a life for myself rather than spend my time complaining about how everyone else is to blame. I gave up the stupid, pointless struggle against the man. And I got down to actually working on my own life. I stopped blaming everyone else for my family being cultists who disowned me. I stopped blaming the world for not helping me recover. All those years rebelling didn't teach me anything. They hadn't even taught me how to rebel. For the first time ever, I stumbled upon what it meant to truly rebel. I was refusing to fall into the cycle of blame, self-victimization, blame, repeat. I was going to rebel against that. You want to know what rebellion really is? It's fighting against the urge to be a victim. Rebellion is achieving great things even though everyone in the world has let you down. That's what being a rebel is. Not slamming police officers, not blindly attacking authority. It's these thoughts that ping-pong around in my emaciated brain when I see the media and others deriding Hong Kong police forces as violent and oppressive. A bunch of people angry at authority. News agencies report the narrative like robots. The protesters are peaceful, law-abiding citizens who are shamelessly attacked by the big bad police. Of course, the message against the police is watered down a bit. Have you noticed that they keep trying to self-victimize, but there's just something about the narrative that seems weak? In fact, there are two issues with the narrative that Hong Kong police are big bad oppressors that are committing violence against the peaceful hippies. First, we know for a fact that a significant amount of protesters crossed the line from demonstration to riot. We know this for absolute, objectively proven fact. We have endless hours of footage and evidence. Of course, it's not all protesters, no one's saying that. But bombing police stations and beating people down in broad daylight is not peaceful. The anti-riot police in Hong Kong are literally risking their lives each day. And second, we know that these protests have elements of riots and elements of terrorism in them. And yet, on the side of the police, these are by far the most peaceful responses ever seen in Hong Kong's history. I'm saying the Hong Kong police have committed almost no violence at all when you take into consideration the size of the riots. A warning to you, if you present someone with this information, they may become irrational, emotional, or violent because it destroys the anti-police narrative that the new access has been working so hard to build up. This can upset people. I will get more threats from telling this truth. But as much as people can hate, in the depths of their hearts they know I do what I think is right for the stability and peace of China. And yes, that includes Hong Kong. So think about that when you're writing your threats to me. We may disagree on our views, but we shouldn't disagree with loving China. Which of us has lost sight of that, you or I? Hong Kong has had protests before, We see them over various issues all over the city's past. If we look at the most significant ones moving backwards, we find an interesting thing happens. When we look at protests from 2003 or 2007 or anything like that, the police responses seem to be proportionate to the levels of violence of the protesters. In other words, if the people tend to protest peacefully, the police tend to respond peacefully. One of the strange things about the 2019 protests is I keep hearing about how violent the police are. There are a lot of videos in which we see nothing, and then suddenly we see police responding to that, whatever that nothing was.
佢從背囊入邊攞出咗一支類似警棍嘅武器襲擊警員。個男人呢係跌咗喺地。警員用警棍打佢嘅手， 佢從背囊入邊攞出咗一支類似一個灰色衫、冇戴口罩嘅男人追喺警察。
So we know we can't just look at some footage to understand the violence levels of the police. So what can we do? Well, let's look at some basic data. Some of the rioters carried British flags when they stormed government buildings. They want to go back to being a British colony, apparently. When the British colonized China, Hong Kong citizens tried to rise up against them several times. In 1967, there was a riot with a tiny, tiny fraction of how many protest today. Unlike the Hong Kong police today, the British did not show restraint. Dozens of protesters were not just beaten, not just suppressed, they were killed. British police killed Hong Kong citizens who protested against the government. So let's take a look at some data samples here. In 1922, around 30,000 people participated in protests. According to deaths and injury statistics, 5 people died and 7 people were injured. So people had about a 0.017% chance to be killed and a 0.023% chance to be injured. In 1925, 250,000 people, 0.021% chance to be killed, 0.068% chance to be injured. In 1967, around 50,000 people, 0.102% chance to be killed, 2% chance to be injured. These are massive numbers. Protesting under British rule was extremely dangerous. Think about that. For every 1,000 people rioting, that's 1 person shot to death by British police and 20 people injured. The 1967 riots lasted about a week. 3 days into it, we can see the reality.
3 straight days of street rioting in the crowded Kowloon Peninsula of Hong Kong bring out scores of police. Almost 300 youths arrested in 3 days of protests. Posters demand the governor's resignation. Thousands of Chinese shouting Maoist slogans urge an end to British rule in the Crown Colony. The inevitable result, violence. The mobs battled police, throwing stones, bottles, anything. Both rioters and police were injured. The retaliation was swift and effective. Tear gas and riot guns loaded with wooden bullets dispersed the crowd.
In the end, the arrests climbed to almost 2,000. The 2019 protests have been going on seemingly forever, but let's be conservative with our estimates here. Let's pretend that they only happened on one single day. The entire 2019 protests all just happened on one single day and no other days. According to organizers, there was 2 million people at its peak. If this protest were happening under British rule, we might expect to see similar numbers to the 1967 ones. In just that one single day, the British would have killed well over 2,000 people and injured more than 40,000. They would have arrested over 77,000 people. So how many people actually have been injured in the 2019 riots? 40,000? Oh, a little over 2,000 apparently. Wow, that's safe compared to under British rule. Arrests? Has the Hong Kong police arrested 77,000 people like the British police might have? 50,000? Okay, how about just 10,000? That would be way less than the British. No? Oh, they've arrested about 1,100 out of 2 million people? Is anyone else seeing this? Okay, but what about deaths? I'm assuming it's around 2,000, right? Or maybe 1,000. The Hong Kong police have only killed 1,000 people, right? That's just half of what the British police might have killed. Oh, I'm sorry, the real number is 0. Hong Kong police have not killed anyone, even though they've been firebombed, ganged up on, and attacked several times with weapons. Every single large riot or protest under British rule resulted in British police killing citizens. All of them. And yet, all of them together don't equal the amount of people protesting these days. Today we see no killing by police in Hong Kong, even when the police lives are put into danger. And yet, if you believe outside media, the police are more violent and dangerous than ever. Based on what metric? Honestly, I can't praise the Hong Kong police enough. They've been more restrained than I've ever seen any police be anywhere ever. And every Hong Konger looking to have their voices heard by throwing bombs at police would do well to remember that. Just be happy you're not rioting in a free country, because you'd likely be dead by now. I've not heard of a single protest in Asia in which people threw Molotov cocktails at a police station that didn't also have police killing citizens. None except the Hong Kong riots, or as I like to call them, the most stunning display of police discipline ever witnessed by mankind. Okay, so now we know that Hong Kong police have been overwhelmingly peaceful compared to British rule. We know they have been so mind-bogglingly restrained that they are a beacon of inspiration for law enforcement across the world. But what about freedom? I mean, at least when Hong Kong was under British rule, they had freedom of speech, right? It's not like their British overlords were making them stop printing books and newspapers about communism, for example. They could talk about anything they wanted, especially anti-British stuff. That was totally okay.
British colonial police swooped down on 3 communist newspapers in Hong Kong. 31 persons were arrested on charges ranging from sedition to inciting riots. A thorough search is made for any anti-British posters and literature.
Oh, so anti-British posters and literature were illegal. 30 arrests, sedition charges. British rule meant death to protesters and lengthy prison sentences or worse for people who made books against the government. I haven't read much about this in the news recently, which is actually really strange because I know the media is not biased. So why aren't they putting this into proper perspective? They're definitely reporting accurately and truthfully. We know that. Huh, what a strange mystery. Special thanks to the Hong Kong police. You are impressive. Someday maybe the level of freedom you're allowing these rioters could ever be felt in the free world. Until then, we'll keep hoping for a peaceful resolution. Thanks everybody. See you soon.